Hello and welcome to this week's Politics Today. And in this programme today we'll be discussing the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, 70 years reigning over us as a monarch. And of course that raises the very important question of what happens to the monarchy after the Queen's reign, which is a very important discussion. So to join me in today's programme, I'm joined by Leif Snelling from the Christian Broadcasting Council, together with Alistair Scott, who's the UK Director for Joseph Storehouse. Olive, it's extraordinary, isn't it, that we are now this summer be marking the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, the longest ever serving monarch in British history. It's incredible, since going back to thousands of years of history, going back to before Alfred the Great. And yet the Queen has been stoic. She's been a source of inspiration, a source of strength and stability for the nation. She's into her 90s and a whole life dedicated to service. And she was first became our Queen back in 1952 when she was 25. Can I say, what are your early memories of Elizabeth becoming Queen?
That is a leading question. In terms of my age, I remember it so well, and the whole thing. I went to boarding school in 1952, and before that, and leading up to that, I was an avid monarchist, and I loved everything to do with the Queen, and I had scrapbooks, all the pictures of her wedding, and I thought the whole thing was just too beautiful for speech. You know, not forgetting that I grew up in the wilds of Africa. You know, it was not used to seeing stagecoaches, or coaches rather, royal coaches, and the monarchy and all the splendour of it and everything else. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But to be serious for a minute, I look back at that time when she acceded to the throne, and I wonder and am amazed at what a fantastic woman she is, and how she has lived her faith in such a way these 70 years. In our lifetime, I think, would say that she hasn't put a foot wrong. Now, I'm sure that there are plenty of people who would say, hey, hang on a minute, I'm quite sure there was this and this and this and this and this and this. But the fact is that she has kept her lips zipped on things that are controversial. She will never speak out about politics. And that's a good thing, because, goodness me, there have been swings and roundabouts on that score. But, you know, she hasn't, and she has kept her dignity, and she's always been fantastic presence in public, with a wonderful smile and wonderful demeanour, everything about her absolutely fantastic. So I do think that she's done the most excellent and fantastic job, and I would say, along with everybody else, you know, God save our gracious Queen. I think that's a very good word, gracious. I think that's precisely what she is.
And Alistair, I mean, I think we have to talk about her father, King George VI, who played a major role in the Second World War, primarily calling for the nation to pray and to repent during times of crisis during the Second World War, whether it was Dunkirk or whether it was the Battle of Britain, or it was ahead of the D-Day landings. As a monarch, we had a godly king. How much do you think of his influence had an impact on Elizabeth and kind of prepared her for God's given role to be our monarch?
I mean, I think greatly. I mean, he was a good man. Health-wise, he struggled a lot, but he had the fear of God, and he understood the importance of prayer, and he did several times call the nation to pray, and the nation responded. I mean, I'm not old enough to remember those days, but I've seen film of people queuing to get into the church buildings and in Westminster Abbey and so many others because of the call to pray, you know. And I'm sure that influence, and the fact that our Queen, went through the Second World War. She saw the miracles of God's hand at various times. all that would be such a major influence on what has become probably our most godly monarch throughout history. She is, as Olive has said, she is a role model, she is dignified, she is gracious, she seems approachable. What more could you ask? And I mean, it's not surprising that she's reigned for 70 years because she has the fear of God. I mean, she was chosen by God, and with all the controversy that's gone on through our lifetime historically, we need a woman like her who stands fast, who is not controversial, as Oliver said. She says what is right, she does what is right, and you know, God save our Queen, yes, absolutely. And you know, scripturally we're told to pray for kings and queens and those in authority, and we have a Queen. We should be praying for her every day, that she continues to reign as long as the Lord wants her to. And I'm sure if she hears the Lord say, you know, pass on the baton, she would do it at a blink of an eyelid. She would hear from God and she would obey God. I believe she's a wonderful example for all of us in standing by her faith. You know, she said she was a defender of the faith, and she's been that all through her life.
Olive, you know, when we hear the Queen's Christmas message, she always mentions Jesus. She always mentions the origins, the importance of Christmas, the birth of Jesus, and the impact of him that it's had on her life and upon the nations. And it's a kind of very lonely role, isn't it, to be the monarch over the last 70 years. And in which she's seen so many prime ministers come and go during that time, and probably offered them many advice in their kind of weekly meetings. But what is it? Is it the Queen's faith that has given her that strength to do that role for 70 years of public service? Or do you think there are other issues at play?
Well, I think it says primarily her faith. She is a true believer. She is really a believer. And I think it must not be an easy thing when you see the succession of prime ministers coming through her door to meet her every week. I'm sure that there must have been times when she must have felt very critical of what they were doing, but she wasn't allowed. She couldn't show that, and she had to always be gracious and always greet them and always listen to what they had to say. And undoubtedly, she's somebody who has taken the role of monarch incredibly seriously. And that is something else as well, because, I mean, she might not have, I suppose. But the fact is that she saw it as her honour, and I just remember those messages when she first acceded to the throne about how she would serve the country as long as she lived, and absolutely meant it. So I think she's been dedicated, absolutely dedicated, and unbelievably disciplined. If I can just tell you a little anecdote, because I think it's quite a sort of an illustrative of it.
Always nice.
A great friend of ours who rose to ambassadorial rank, when he died tragically in an accident, the Queen invited his wife to be her lady-in-waiting. They were great friends of ours, and our friend would never ever say anything, you know, would never give anything away whatsoever. But on one occasion, I remember she accompanied the Queen to South Africa, I think to Durban, somewhere like that. I don't know whether she did it a number of times. But for us, who just see her appear in, you know, gloved and hatted and with her handbag and looking gracious, what is involved in that? And I mean, the planning of these things is meticulous. I mean, it's literally minute by minute by minute. I mean, say something like the memorial service on Armistice Day. You know, at 11, you would stand on the step leading into Whitehall. At 11:01, you will take the first step down the step, and so on and so on and so on. And it is timed minute by minute. And the discipline of leading that kind of life and everything that is involved. So, I mean, say going on a journey somewhere, to another country. Then the planning involved in that, I tell you, it's absolutely colossal, meticulous in every detail. So the fact that she has led that incredibly disciplined life, I think, too, contributes to what she is and how she appears in public. I think it's I know that there are very few people that could ever come in, anywhere near that kind of daily discipline, because she's doing it all the time, every day. Not just once. It's all the time, all the time, every day. And that's what it's like.
And Alistair, what do you think the characteristics are needed to be a good monarch? And not only is she the monarch, but she's also our head of state and also head of the Commonwealth as well. So it's not only our nation that she's responsible for, but also for many other nations that are part of the Commonwealth as their head of state as well, the likes of the Australians, the Canadians, so many African states as well.
Well, I mean, some of the words we've already used, a woman who's with dignity, a woman who fears the Lord. I mean, you couldn't ask for more than that. But it's her whole caring attitude. You feel with her, she cares about the welfare of the nation and the people. You don't often feel that about politicians, sadly. But certainly our Queen is the perfect role model. She's like the mother or grandmother, depending on your age, you'd love to have. She's bright, aged 96 that she is now, and she's as bright as a button. She knows what's going on. I think she's just the perfect woman that you would have as a, and we have lived through an era where there have been so many attempts at discrediting, I think that's the right word, the royal family and the monarchy, and republicanism raises its head. And yet she has survived. And you hardly, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say a word about her which is not righteous. She is so highly esteemed, looked up to, whether you are a Republican or a monarchist, you know she is a woman who needs to be respected. She's an awesome woman, it's the word we use for our God, but as a queen, she's been a truly respectful, loving, caring woman, and she's had a lot to put up with and
she's unbelievably well informed.
Yeah.
So she deals with her boxes every single day of her life, and has done 70 years, and it's
probably more than we can say for our current Prime Minister, but that's for another politics today.
That's another topic of conversation.
We weren't going to mention it.
But I mean, the fact is that there is not a single day when she doesn't go meticulously through all the papers that come in her box, and so she knows everything that there is to know about what's going on.
And Olive, since you were born in Africa, what does what does the Queen mean to the Commonwealth? Because when it comes down to her legacy and looking back at the last 70 years of her reign, and we saw the breakup of the British Empire that she would have she would have grown up with, she would have known about it, and then in the 60s we really saw the breakup of the British Empire. But she then developed a passion from the Commonwealth nations, and it's her involvement in the Commonwealth that's kept the Commonwealth together. And particularly at this time that we've entered into Brexit, we've broken away from the EU, the Commonwealth becomes more important than it has done for the last, 50 plus years. Yeah. So in terms of our wisdom, our hindsight, how important does the Commonwealth view her as their head of state as well?
It's unbelievably important, and having grown up, I suppose I'm a relic. I'm an interesting relic. I'm probably the last generation of
living history. I describe it as a kind of
relic.
Living history testimony that we can have on the programme.
Born in a British protectorate all of those years ago. And so, I mean, I can remember a royal visit in 1947. The King and Queen and Margaret and Elizabeth came on a royal visit. And I can remember that as clearly as anything. I mean, it's like that probably everywhere she goes. I mean, they absolutely adored her. They came out in their thousands, and it was a fantastic sight. The Basotho men wear a blanket round their shoulders like this, and a kind of a conical woven hat. And they came in their thousands from all over Basotholand, and they were there. And the great thing, their great cry is threefold. They go Khotso, which is peace, Nala, Paula, rain. Yes, so and they just absolutely adored her, and you see that everywhere she goes.
So respected.
And I can remember standing there waving my little flag amongst all the children. No, I think that she is genuinely adored. And it's something which transcends the boundaries of nations, transcends national boundaries, and something which is it's something which is done through love, not through coercion.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Alistair, we know that we've been given 2 bank holidays back to back in June to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I think the first monarch that's ever had that title celebration. And how important is it that we celebrate that? When they're talking about organising street parties, as it was for her coronation when she first became Queen back in 1952, and trying to recreate that spirit of 52.
It's very important, isn't it? Because as Olive has just said, she's so respected by nations, and not just our nation. She is a queen to the Commonwealth, really. And you know, she's been so gracious. She's been an amazing woman of God. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having, so I know in our village in Rusper down there in Sussex, they're already organising street parties and so on, and I'm looking forward to being part of that for the fun element, but more as a mark of respect for this amazing Queen who has reigned for 70 years. Wow, that's incredible. You know, not many of us live to be 70, and she's reigned as Queen for 70 years, done everything so righteously. Yeah. So I'm so looking forward to the celebration. As you say, it's a one-off event. I can't see it ever happening. It won't happen in my lifetime. For sure.
No, nor mine either. So, and Olive, we have to get on to the very, very important question, really, and say, what is the future for the monarchy after the Queen? Because the Queen has been a source of stability and strength for the nation. We know that it's her Christian devotion and her Christian faith that has sustained her during those past 70 years, dealing with major political crises, dealing with major economic crises, great social and political changes, as well as cultural changes throughout that whole time. And yet she's remained constant. But with the likelihood of Prince Charles descending to the throne and Camilla being given the new title of Queen Consort, we're seeing a completely new monarchy will develop, and I'm not so sure if so much of the British public favour Charles as king, particularly with his outspoken views, his support for the World Economic Forum and the globalists. He'll be a very, very different king, won't he, than his mother?
Well, whether he will allow himself to speak on controversial subjects it remains to be seen. But I mean, the monarchy should not comment on what's going on around, but whether Charles will be able to button his lip and not speak out. I would imagine that he will be obliged to, but then inevitably there's going to be a huge, enormous change, and it'll be a big wrench in our history when the Queen dies, undoubtedly. And I think that there are all kinds of things that come up in our minds. For instance, Charles having said many decades back, that he wanted to be, he wanted, when it came to being the head of the Church of England, which I think is pretty doubtful kind of role, nevertheless, saying that he wanted to be the monarch of faith, of faiths rather than faith.
Yeah, defender of the faith rather than the faith.
And I think that raised all kinds of doubts in people's minds as to what kind of a monarch Charles will be, or what indeed are his his religious views now? Is he of the same ilk as his mother? I have absolutely no idea, but I don't think so. So we will undoubtedly see a huge change. I would imagine that there will be a lot of republicanism that will emerge, and how that will go down, I don't know. It's an unknown, it's a complete unknown, but I mean the fact is that if the monarchy has survived thousands and thousands and thousands of years, I would imagine that stands a good chance of surviving such a happening. And yeah, we wait and see.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that Charles has waited his entire life for. He's coming almost, to the end of his life when he could actually become king. But there has been discussion that should be passed on to the next generation, that William and Catherine should take the throne, only because they have more relevance to a younger generation and have a kind of younger, more dynamic monarchy. But it does raise the big question. There is no doubt that once the Queen's gone, the mourning for her will be unparalleled. Nothing that we've probably seen in this nation for such a long time. But also the fact that Charles brings in his kind of New Age beliefs, his strange political beliefs as well. How much do you think that will have an impact on the working of government between the Prime Minister and the monarch? And could we see that growing tension between number 10 and Buckingham Palace, something that we kind of rarely saw with the Queen?
Yeah, well, I mean, as Olive has just said, the Queen was well schooled and prepared, even though it came much faster than she expected. She was respected and did all the right things. One hopes Prince Charles is maturing and growing, getting to be well trained in the same way, and would be one of those who would not express the opinions very much like his mother would. But as Olive has said, we just have to wait and see. But as believers, we are instructed. It's a command. It's not a request if you feel like it. It's pray for those kings and queens. So really our fate in some ways is in God's hands, but in us being prayerful and intercessors enough to pray for God's choice and God's will to be done for our nation. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time when it does come. And talking about passing on to the next generation beyond Prince Charles, I don't think that was ever likely to happen, because it would have been such a slap in the face for Prince Charles, and I just can't imagine the Queen ever doing that. I can imagine it being a shorter reign, for sure, much shorter than the Queen's, and then it being passed on. He would choose to pass it on to Prince William and Kate, simply for that very reason, that they are more relevant to the generation that we are. The nation has changed hugely, let's be honest, since the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. I mean, republicanism was a huge episode in the 60s and 70s, and a big challenge to the monarchy. And yeah, one hopes that Prince Charles understands the enormity of the responsibility he carries by being a future king, and then likewise Prince William would understand that role too. And we have to pray. We have to really be praying for them, whether we like them, dislike them, don't agree with their opinions. That's not what God asks us to do. He just says pray for them.
Absolutely. And Olive, we're down to the last 3 minutes of the programme or so. In summing up, as we reflect upon the Queen's gracious reign over us, which is over 70 years, and the national anthem, we call for God Save the Queen in our national anthem. As Christians, how should we be approaching her Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June, as she marks her 70th anniversary of her reign?
I would say that we celebrate it deeply as Christians, and pray for Her Majesty, that her faith will be deepened, that a greater experience of the power of the Holy Spirit in her life, and everything to do with her relationship with her Maker, as I would imagine she's taking very seriously the fact that one day she will die, and I would imagine that she's taking that you have to take it seriously, don't you? It's going to happen whether you like it or not. But I mean, the fact is, it's such an important thing to know that she is going to be with Jesus, and to pray for her, to pray for her family, to pray that the strong Christian faith will continue to be at the very center of our nation's life. And just one thing to say about faiths being a defender of faiths and a defender of the faith. Any people that I've spoken to of other faiths, they say, no, it's not that we want to water down what Britain has at having the Christian faith at the very foundational level. That is absolutely fundamental. And the fact that we can then talk to other people of other faiths graciously in the way that Jesus would have done. But it's absolutely essential that remains foundational, strong, and absolutely unwavering to the very end. And that's what I pray for the Queen. I pray that when the time does come, when she dies, that she will die in incredible peace and joyous reunion with the Saviour that she has served all her days.
Absolutely. And Alistair, within 30 seconds, as Christians, how should we be praying for the Queen and the monarchy, particularly as we see the trouble with Prince Harry, and also with her oldest son, Prince Andrew, and some of the crises within the monarchy, but to also be that source of inspiration to our government and to our nation, to be that source of strength and stability, which she has been for the past 70 years.
Well, I mean, the simplest prayer is the Lord's Prayer, really, isn't it? Because looking all the way around the Queen and her foundations of faith, we just pray that foundation, that rock that she stands on, the others around her will see the benefit of it. You know, Psalm 103, forgetting all his benefits, and would desire to follow her faith. So I think we pray, God save our Queen, God bless her, and let that heritage move on to the next generation.
So Alistair and Olive, thank you so much for being my guest on this week's Politics Today. And I want to thank you for watching this programme. I think it's imperative that we hold the Queen in our prayers and thank God for her, because she's reigned over us for the past 70 years, which is an incredible achievement. And so the nation needs to give something back to her and to enjoy the Platinum celebration. So thank you for watching this week's Politics Today.